Well, good evening and hello. Today we're going to be reacting to 7 things Americans have more than the British people. There's probably about 7 billion things Americans have more than us, but we're going to be starting with this 7. Firstly, happy bloody Christmas. I appreciate you. I appreciate the support you guys have given my channel over the past year. It's been absolutely insane. You're great. Secondly, you're great. Thirdly, hey, did you guys join the live stream yesterday here that we did on YouTube? If you did you enjoy it? If you did, you probably seen that I was in a dress at some point. And again, if you did, somebody thought that I was some part of some sort of humiliation ritual, and he left this comment, and I was kind of shocked. What the absolute f is wrong with people? Thirdly, you're great. Let's do this.
I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America
lost in the pond.
And one of those memos pertains to the things we own, whether that's money, a house, your soul. We all have things in our possession that make us who we are.
True.
But after living in the United States for 16 years, I've come to find that Americans are more likely to own certain things than British people are. Same is true in reverse.
Okay.
But that's not what this video is about. Now, if you own a free subscription to this YouTube channel, thanks. If not,
welcome.
Do that now. Sorry for...
I'm pretty sure I do. Oh no, I am. I am now. Oh my God, Lawrence, I'm so sorry.
Meantime, here are 7 things that Americans are more likely to own than British people.
Okay. Car.
And the first thing that we're going to talk about is cars. And you might...
What? Wait a minute. What do you mean?
Thinking, Lawrence, that's not surprising. You always talk about how America has a really large car culture. And this is true, but I think that ignores the fact that when I lived in Britain, I was far more likely to experience a traffic jam. Why is that, Lawrence? Well, because we have way more people in a smaller area. And so even though there are fewer cars per person, there are still millions of cars. So that probably cemented in my head a false impression of just how many cars we have in England compared to here. But there's no arguing with facts, even though some of you try. In the US, about 91% of households own at least one car, while in the UK, it's closer to 77%. Of course, Americans don't just stop at one car. They're often juggling 2, 3,
that's
maybe
actually
4 vehicles
insane
per family, practically enough to start a car dealership. This partly explains why in the state of Montana, each resident averages nearly 2 cars. In Britain, if some...
There's no... Alexa, I need a population count in Montana immediately. Alexa, how many people are in Montana?
According to the 2020 US Census, the population of Montana is 1.08 million people, which is a 9.6% increase over the 2010 US Census.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Somebody owns 2 cars, they're either a...
Well, did he say 90% or everyone?
In the state of Montana, each resident averages nearly 2 cars.
Each resident?
In Britain, if somebody owns 2 cars, they're either a millionaire or a car thief. In fact, the idea of parking more than one car outside of your average British home sounds like a logistical nightmare.
Kinda does, to be honest.
While Brits are debating whether to pay for an MOT this year, Americans are hopping into their pickup trucks, SUVs, and maybe even a spare sedan.
Oh.
Perhaps one of the more surprising entries on this list is that Americans are more likely than British people to own a dog. Firstly, I can say that anecdotally as somebody who lived in Britain for a long time and didn't own my own dog, but did after I moved to the United States.
Okay.
Therefore, that's proof. It's just not very good proof.
Not that good.
Before we look at the facts again,
you got more.
I have more anecdotes. Because initially, after I moved to the US, I lived with my in-laws who had 240 dogs. It was 3 dogs, but I mean, still 3 dogs feels like a lot, especially as somebody who raised a puppy last year.
I have 3 ADHD riddled chihuahuas. I can attest to that. That's actually factual correct. 1 chihuahua equals about 80 dogs. Just saying.
Yeah. And yet it feels like it's not particularly uncommon in America. In Britain, as my wife said to me the other day, we seem to have a concern about leaving dogs alone when we go to work, which is fair enough, but I'm, you know, a YouTube sensation and I work from home, so I don't have that problem.
Lawrence, we really need to work on your relatability.
That said, it is one thing to feel that Americans have more dogs than British people. Once again, here's voiceover Lawrence from the basement to give you the facts. Statistically, around 40% of American households have at least 1 dog, which means that the other 60% have made a mistake. Compare this to the UK, where the percentage is thought to be between 30 and 36%. So why is there a disparity? Well, maybe it's because 36%? Dogs require something that we as a nation of British people haven't quite figured out.
No gardens.
enthusiasm. Either way, Americans don't just live with dogs, they treat them like royalty. Doggy daycare,
Good.
hot cups, Halloween costumes.
Oh.
And I was about to say that it all sounds a little bit much, but then I remembered Arthur has enjoyed all three of those things.
Yep.
Dogs bring us joy, but there's one animal out there that insists on doing the opposite. Data
Cat.
brokers. Data brokers are those entities that sell your personal information.
Oh, and she are good, man. A gun? Yeah, well, this is...
You're not gonna
Now we're
believe this
getting to
one.
it.
When I was doing research for this video, my face turned into thumbnail.
Plead the
Lauren.
fifth.
Because, and I hope you're sitting down for this, Americans are more likely to own a gun than British people.
What?
Which
What?
might
That's
sound
crazy.
like sarcasm, but one thing that often doesn't get spoken about when it comes to Britain is we do have guns. It's true. Contrary to popular belief, not all guns are completely banned across the UK.
Yeah, 'cause
They're
they
just
go
heavily
hunting for ducks
regulated.
and shit,
In order
right?
To obtain a rifle or a shotgun, a civilian must obtain applicable licenses and must have a valid reason for owning one. These reasons include sport shooting and hunting, but don't extend to firing off a few rounds at midnight on New Year's Eve. And yes, that last sentence was aimed at Chainsaw Jim. However, as is famously
Chainsaw
known,
Jim?
this pales in comparison to gun ownership in the United States. In the US, it turns out there are more guns than people. For every 100
There's no way. Okay, no, that kind of makes sense because... No, it doesn't actually. Take it back. What?
Americans, there are about 120 firearms, making it the highest such ratio in the world. For sake of comparison, 100 Brits will statistically have about 5, which is similar to the percentage of Brits that have been thrown
That's
out of a pub.
crazy.
Coincidence? I don't know. So Brits often ask me, ooh, Lawrence, how many guns do you see every single day? And the answer to that is next to zero. Because unless you happen to be friends with hunters, members of the police force, or gangs, people aren't just wielding them on the street. They conceal them in their clothes. I don't have X-ray eyes, so I just assume that maybe they're there. There's a surprising lack of visibility around guns. And you might say, Lawrence,
Yeah.
that's because you live in Illinois where they have strict open carry laws. But the thing is, I also lived in Indiana where they don't, and it was the same story.
Wait, does the law change per state? Like, for, like, determining whether, like, they're, like... What, okay, so what state am I allowed to walk about with my hand? You know what I mean? I will wield this, and I will shoot it into the clouds. Obviously, there's no states that allow you to shoot it. Is there? I mean, is there, like, does there have to be a law that allows it, or does there just have to be a law that doesn't allow it? Do you know what I mean? Like, does the law have to say, you can do it? I don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Really just
Play a
pointing this
video,
out so
shut
that my
up.
Aunt Mildred stops asking.
What I was trying to get at is how many, or what states are you allowed to walk about with it in your pocket or on your hip? Let me know down below.
If I'm all right. Walking down the street, I think I've maybe seen one gun in 16 years wielded on the street, and it was a super soaker.
Well, there you go then.
Yes, a lot of American households, I would imagine, do own a Bible. And that's because I think Americans in general, if they are religious, are more likely to wear their religion on their sleeve than we are in Britain, where people, generally speaking, keep that to themselves.
Okay.
I think, as well, it's fair to say that Britain is a more secular culture. We've got a higher percentage of people there that I would say are non-believers or non-practicing religious people. Whereas here, while, you know, America doesn't have churches that are 800 years old, it does have churches on about every corner trying to compete with Starbucks. And so Bibles, as well as crucifixes on walls, and maybe a Bible verse or two hanging on the same wall, is just something you see way more of here. You know, even people I've known
I can
who
imagine.
aren't,
I can
like,
get on board with that one.
particularly overtly religious have that stuff on their walls because it's just sort of culturally ingrained. Here's a statistic for you. In the US, nearly 88% of households own at least one Bible. And not just that, the average household owns 4, about 1 for each car. Now, I couldn't find any reliable
4?
statistics for Britain, but I did find this. Only 6%.
Maybe a silly question, but why do we need 4 though? Isn't 1 enough? Maybe 2? Why we got 4?
Of Brits
what I
actively
mean?
practice
Why?
Christianity or regularly read the Bible.
Are they all-
though
are they
whether it's a
different?
sign of devotion or, you know, a cultural habit. The Bible is clearly a key player in American households, and as for Britain, let's just say the Bible's collecting dust next to that unopened copy of Pride and Prejudice.
God dang it. Gym memberships.
And some of you might be watching this going, isn't America famously kind of overweight and out of shape? And while there are very much elements of that, it's also a
Now,
country...
you know why this is, though? You know why people have this kind of process toward the US, people being obese? It's because there's just so many people, man. And it's the biggest country in the world in terms of, like, out being out there, you know? So I guarantee you there's more like there's more obese people in so many other countries in the world than there is actually America per capita. Like per fucking 5 people. Every what in 5 people. I bet you America isn't that high on the list. I could be wrong. I'd like someone to actually correct me in that. I guarantee it's not. It's just the media tells you that.
Extremes. We talked about this recently, to the extent that gym culture, just like car culture, just like any other embedded culture within American culture, is a real thing. You could be driving through Chicago just down the street and you look to your right and see people working out through a window. And these are not uncommon. But for me, growing up in Britain, I think the last time I went to a gym was at school. Actually, I think that's still the case. I don't know why that is. I think we're a nation of joggers, so we like to work out that way, and cycling. I think our country has the infrastructure for outdoor exercise.
There is a lot of cyclers
than the United States does. Where also, I think you're less likely to find a sort of public swimming bath. Like,
I feel like though I feel like it's changed over the past lot of years now. I feel like there used to be a lot of the jogging culture here used to be so much bigger than what it used to be, but I'm telling you now, they've kind of converted to the gym. The gym culture here in the UK now is so much bigger than what it used to be 10 years ago. Like it's huge now. I don't see many people out doing that and that many jogging anymore, to be honest. People still do it, but like I know a lot of people, and it used to be quite popular here, but it ain't anymore. A lot of people do go to the gym instead now. And you know what? It's good to see because they're in there making them gains.
They do exist here.
You know what I mean?
But in Britain, they're far more common, although the one that I grew up with in my hometown closed down. So I don't know how true that still is. I think it's just we have different ways of staying in shape. Statistically, around 24% of Americans claim to have a gym membership, which sounds impressive until you realise it still is. I think it's just we have different ways of staying in shape. Statistically, around 24% of Americans claim to have a gym membership, which sounds impressive until you realise that most of us think that leg day is walking to and from the basement, and cardio means bending down to tie your shoelace. Meanwhile, the British approach fitness with a little more subtlety. About 14% of Brits are signed up for a gym, but it's not because they're less active. After all, lugging around 4 shopping bags of Tesco meal deals has its own charm. Why sweat in lycra when you've got the great outdoors and a pot noodle as your workout incentive?
I mean, that's kind of true though, isn't it? It's kind of true. Sweatpants?
Something that you might wear at a gymnasium. Sweatpants. I remember having a pair of
literally live in them
when I was a child.
all the time.
I don't remember owning a single pair since then. In Britain, it could be that we're less likely to embrace casual fashion.
You know what? I actually hate wearing anything else. Cargo pants, jeans. Fucking hate them. I hate them. I wear sweatpants every day. I'd wear them everywhere if I could.
Although I do remember shell suits. Here, sweatpants aren't just the fashion choice of the gymnasium goers. I sometimes see people walking down this street in them, or going to the shops, or sitting in a restaurant. And frankly, they just look a little bit silly. Although I've just remembered I was wearing a raccoon suit earlier. So what do we think, voiceover Lawrence? Are your observations of sweatpants accurate? Americans are nearly twice as likely to own a pair of sweatpants compared to their British counterparts.
They're the best.
And that's not just some stat I've made up.
They are the best.
That ChatGPT just made up, but it sounds right. Meanwhile, across the pond, Britons seem to reserve their sweatpants for painting the house. It's less Netflix and chill and more DIY and drill.
I wore them every day. Every single day.
But maybe it comes down to the weather. I mean, Americans enjoy
unless I'm going out somewhere, I have to put on some cargo pants. Hate it.
Bliss, whereas Brits don't do that. So is this a love story between Americans and their joggers, or just a cultural misunderstanding about what's truly formal wear for a Target run? Either way, the numbers don't lie, even made up ones. Sweatpants are basically America's second uniform. Not to finish talking about toilets, but we're going to finish talking about toilets, because in the vast majority of the more than 10
not in the same bathroom
I've lived at, there has been a second toilet. Am I complaining? No, because then you get one to yourself when you live with only one.
Oh, like a second bathroom?
Mine's the basement one. But in Britain, a second toilet within a house, I think, would be considered a luxury, and maybe that.
What? Maybe 20 years ago it might have been a luxury, but like I would say nearly every house in the UK now has 2. Not every house, not nearly every. That's wrong. That's talking shit. But no, a lot of houses here do have. I can't remember the last time I was in any house that didn't have 2 toilets. Can't remember any.
That's down to the fact that our houses are smaller, or that we don't have White Castle. But I think every address that I lived at in Britain had just the one, which It's really bad when it gets blocked and you live with 5 people.
Shocking.
According to a recent survey, 65% of US homes have 2 bathrooms.
What about UK?
Compared to just 27% in the UK. Now, that's
I'm sorry. That can't be true. That cannot be true. There's no way. But what do you mean survey though? Where are you going? Are you going to like an old village and doing the survey there? Or are you going to like a place? See, it depends where you go though. You know what I mean? It depends where you go. You could go to like a place with new builds or like builds. Every house that's been built in the last 20 years has surely got 2 bloody toilets in it, man. There's no way. Where are you doing the survey? Alexa, how many houses in the UK have 2 toilets in them?
From answers.com. But there are around 25 million households. If you assume an average of 2 toilets per household, that would give 50 million. So there's roughly 1 per person.
I have no idea what that means. All right.
That's not just convenience, it's a logistical dream. Imagine never having to queue up at 7 a.m, dodging flatmates in fluffy robes while clutching a toothbrush like a weapon of war. So why is there a disparity?
Can I just say something real quick? Whenever I lived with my mum and dad, they had 2 toilets. And I remember I got my bedroom extended, got my bedroom made bigger, and they kind of got rid of their ensuite bathroom in their bedroom so that my bedroom could be bigger because it was kind of conjoined on the same wall. So technically right now they only have 1 toilet. So what I've just been talking about there for the past 5 minutes, ignore it all.
Well, it boils down to that thing again. Space. The average American home is over twice the size of the average British one, meaning there's plenty of room to fit
Over
that extra
twice
throne.
the size.
Although in Britain, we do have actual thrones. Anyway,
God
that was
damn.
it. I'm
Lawrence,
sure there are plenty
thank
more
you, brother.
things that Americans...
Great video as always, Lawrence. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm uploading this on Christmas Eve, so I hope you guys have a great bloody holiday. Have a great new year. And yes, let me know down below if you like bananas. Goodbye.